Being a caveman 1 million years ago was nothing like the adventures we imagine. There were no comforts, no safety nets, and no guarantee of surviving to the next sunrise. Every day was a battle against hunger, disease, predators, and the elements, and most days the odds were stacked against you. From the moment a child was born, survival was uncertain. Many infants never saw their first birthday. Those who made it to adulthood carried the scars of early malnutrition, chronic pain, and lifelong injuries. Even the simplest task, finding food, staying warm, or sleeping through the night, could turn deadly in an instant. Predators didn't wait politely for humans to pass. Cave lions, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and crocodiles roamed the land. Even the air could be lethal, with raptors swooping down on the smallest humans. The landscape itself was hostile, freezing cold during ice ages, scorching heat during droughts, and sudden storms that could destroy fragile shelters. Disease and injury were constant companions. A cut, a broken bone, or an infection that is easily treatable today could mean certain death. Women faced near constant risk during childbirth, and food scarcity forced humans into desperate, sometimes horrifying choices. Being a caveman meant living in fear, discomfort, and relentless struggle. There was no glory, no leisure, no comfort, only the harsh reality that every sunrise brought new challenges and every night could be your last. So this is the story of why it truly sucked to be a human 1 million years ago. Imagine being born into a world where the odds of surviving childhood were frighteningly low. 1 million years ago, disease was one of the deadliest forces early humans faced. Long before modern medicine, antibiotics, or even a basic understanding of infection, a simple cut, stomach upset, or fever could become a death sentence. Archaeological evidence and fossil records reveal the reality. Disease claimed roughly 3/4 of all early human lives, making it the silent predator that stalked every community. Infant mortality was catastrophic. Studies suggest that around 27% of infants failed to survive their first year, and nearly half of all children never reached puberty. Childhood was a battlefield where survival depended not just on strength, but on luck, the vigilance of caregivers, and access to scarce resources. Every bite of food, every sip of water, every minor illness could decide the fate of a young life. The fossils themselves tell the story. KNM-ER 1808, a female Homo erectus from Kubifora, Kenya, survived weeks or months with severe disease affecting her entire femur. Abnormal bone growth shows chronic illness, potentially from hypervitaminosis, a treponemal infection, or sickle cell anemia. She lived in constant pain, clearly requiring care from others just to survive. Her struggle demonstrates not only the brutality of prehistoric disease, but the necessity of social support for survival. Without the aid of her group, she likely would have perished much sooner. Disease wasn't limited to adults. Children's teeth and bones show signs of malnutrition, dental decay, and repeated illness. Evidence from sites like Dmanisi in Georgia reveals severe tooth wear and enamel hyperplasia, clear markers of repeated nutritional stress and illness during growth. Even surviving adolescence did not guarantee a pain-free life. Chronic infections, spinal tuberculosis, and untreated injuries left many adults weakened and vulnerable. Beyond the physical toll, disease shaped every aspect of life. Humans were forced to move constantly, seek clean water sources, and spend hours gathering food to survive weakened bodies. Even small injuries could become infected, compounding the danger of daily life. Archaeologists also see evidence of compensatory care, adults tending to sick or disabled individuals, showing that cooperation was essential just to make it another day. Life expectancy hovered around 33 years, and that was if you were lucky enough to survive childhood. For the majority, pain, illness, and premature death were constants. There was no recovery, no hospital, no medicine, only a harsh struggle against the microbes and diseases that modern humans take for granted. Life for a caveman 1 million years ago wasn't just about surviving disease or hunger. Every step outside your shelter carried the risk of becoming someone else's meal. Early humans were prey, not predators. The fossil record is filled with evidence showing just how vulnerable our ancestors were. From massive carnivores to aerial hunters, the world was a constant death trap. cave lions, larger and more powerful than their modern descendants, roamed the landscapes of Africa and Eurasia. Saber-toothed cats with their dagger-like canines were capable of killing large herbivores, and humans were easy targets. Massive cave bears occupied shelters that early humans desperately needed, making a safe place to sleep almost impossible to find. Dire wolves, crocodiles, and even predatory birds completed the list of threats that could strike from any direction. Take OH7, a Homo habilis individual who suffered a horrifying death, caught in a lethal struggle between a crocodile and a leopard. Or consider the Taung Child, an Australopithecus africanus skull with punctures in the eye sockets and scratches on the sides, evidence of predation from above by a raptor. Prehistoric humans were hunted relentlessly, sometimes by more than one predator at a time. Even tools offered little protection. Early stone implements, while useful, were no match for a predator's claws, fangs, or sheer strength. Humans relied on speed, cunning, and cooperation to survive, climbing trees, hiding in rough terrain, and staying in groups for protection. But these strategies were far from foolproof. Fossil evidence from sites like Olduvai Gorge shows Homo habilis remains with leopard and crocodile bite marks, suggesting that escape was often partial at best, and death could come from multiple angles. Humans had to remain vigilant at all times, traveling only in daylight when possible, choosing campsites carefully, and taking turns staying awake at night to guard against nocturnal hunters. Sleep was shallow and fragmented, because deep rest meant vulnerability. Fear of predators was embedded into every movement, every decision, every moment of life. Even shelters offered no certainty of safety. Caves could be occupied by bears or hyenas, and primitive structures were no defense against large carnivores. Archaeological evidence shows human bones in predator dens, and coprolites, which are fossilized feces containing human fragments, confirm that early humans were part of the food chain, not the apex predators. One wrong move, one distraction, one unlucky encounter, and death could arrive in an instant. In this world, being human meant living every day under the jaws and claws of creatures perfectly designed to kill you, a daily reality that modern life can scarcely imagine. And unlike today, there were no grocery stores, farms, or even predictable hunting patterns. Every meal had to be earned through constant searching, scavenging, and risky hunting, and failure often meant death. Early humans relied on a combination of tubers, nuts, seeds, berries, and whatever meat they could scavenge or hunt. Plant foods made up roughly 80% of the diet, but they were tough, fibrous, and often low in calories. Even consuming these foods required enormous effort, as teeth and jaws bore the wear and tear of constant grinding. Fossils from sites like Sangiran, Java, show severe dental pathology, including abnormal premolar and molar relationships, revealing nutritional stress and difficulty processing food. Meat offered high-calorie rewards, but acquiring it was dangerous and unpredictable. Large herbivores could injure hunters, while scavenging from predator kills carried the risk of confrontation with lions, hyenas, or other humans. The BK site at Olduvai Gorge provides evidence of early humans participating in massive buffalo kills, demonstrating not only their determination to secure food, but also the extreme risk involved. Skeletal remains show trauma likely resulting from hunting and butchering attempts. A reminder that food acquisition could be deadly. Seasonal shortages added another layer of peril. During droughts or harsh winters, edible plants became scarce, water sources dried up, and starvation loomed. Enamel hyperplasia found in teeth from multiple 1-million-year-old sites indicates repeated episodes of malnutrition during childhood, leaving permanent marks in skeletal tissue. Individuals who survived these periods were often smaller, weaker, and more susceptible to disease and predation. The harsh realities of prehistoric nutrition forced early humans into desperate measures. Fossil evidence from KNM-ER 741, a Homo erectus tibia from Kubifora, Kenya, shows cut marks consistent with cannibalism, a survival strategy in times of extreme food scarcity. Humans were forced to exploit every available resource, including the bodies of their own kind, to endure. Food scarcity also demanded innovation. Early humans used stone tools to process tough plants and strip meat from carcasses, and bone tools to extract marrow, a rare, calorie-dense resource. But these technologies were primitive and limited, offering only marginal increases in survival odds. Hunting and foraging were exhausting, constant, and rarely guaranteed. Even within social groups, access to food could be uneven. Competition for calories, water, and hunting spoils may have fueled intergroup violence, further complicating survival. Every bite, every hunt, every plant gathered was a battle against nature and against the limits of the human body. So early humans were trapped in a cycle of constant work for basic survival, a daily struggle where empty stomachs were matched only by the dangers lurking at every turn. The climate during this period was also unpredictable and extreme. Ice ages gripped the planet, lowering average temperatures by as much as 7 degrees Celsius, while droughts and erratic rainfall created desert-like conditions in regions where water and food were already scarce. Fossil evidence from Olduvai Gorge reveals periods of dramatic environmental stress. Volcanic ash layers suggest catastrophic eruptions, while fluctuations in lake levels indicate severe droughts. Paleosols, ancient soil layers, record arid conditions that would have made access to food and fresh water incredibly difficult. Every day, early humans had to navigate landscapes that could change dramatically in a matter of weeks or months, transforming familiar territory into a deadly trap. Cold temperatures brought their own threats. Frostbite and hypothermia were ever-present dangers for Homo erectus and other early humans. Without insulated clothing, proper shelter, or fire, tissue damage from freezing temperatures could lead to loss of fingers, toes, or even limbs, or death from prolonged exposure. Archaeological evidence shows repeated attempts to maintain fire and construct basic shelters, demonstrating both ingenuity and the constant struggle against the elements. Heat and drought were no less deadly. Scorching sun, limited rainfall, and poor water sources turned once fertile areas into barren plains. Early humans had to memorize the locations of rivers and springs, follow the seasonal movements of animals, and adapt to landscapes that could switch from lush to hostile almost overnight. The unpredictability of the weather demanded constant problem-solving. Shelter was critical but rarely safe. Caves could flood or collapse, and rudimentary huts offered limited protection against storms, cold winds, and predators. Fire was essential for warmth and protection, yet it required constant attention. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans had mastered controlled fire to a degree, but storms, wind, or lack of fuel could snuff it out, leaving individuals exposed to freezing temperatures and nocturnal predators. Even movement across the landscape carried risks. Crossing rivers could mean drowning, especially during sudden floods. Open plains offered little cover, increasing vulnerability to predators. Heavy rainfall or volcanic ash could ruin foraging areas, forcing early humans to expend energy and risk their lives in search of alternative resources. Every decision, whether to leave a shelter, travel to a new water source, or hunt for scarce prey, involved a delicate calculation between opportunity and survival. Environmental stress also magnified other dangers. Starvation became more likely when food sources were scarce, injuries could become fatal when help or warmth was unavailable, and disease spread more easily in communities struggling to survive harsh conditions. Life was a constant battle against climate itself, with humans pushed to their physical and cognitive limits every single day. Life 1 million years ago was not only hard, it was physically punishing. Early humans lived in constant pain, sustained injuries, and suffered from ailments that modern medicine would instantly treat. The OH82 distal ulna from Olduvai Gorge shows that some individuals sustained serious injuries in isolation, possibly dying alone or after being scavenged by predators. Many others exhibit healed fractures and chronic injuries, yet even survival was never comfortable. These injuries caused years of pain, restricted movement, and increased vulnerability to predation and malnutrition. Childbirth was particularly deadly for women. Without surgical intervention, infection control, or pain management, complications during pregnancy, labor, and postpartum periods often proved fatal. Maternal mortality rates may have ranged from 1.5% to 25%, and many children failed to survive infancy or early childhood. Disease compounded the physical toll. Conditions such as tuberculosis, hypervitaminosis A, or treponemal infections caused prolonged suffering, sometimes lasting weeks or months. Individuals with such diseases required care from others to survive, highlighting both the social cooperation of early humans and the constant burden imposed by illness. Even minor injuries could escalate into fatal conditions. Stone tools, while essential for survival, were dangerous to produce and use. One slip during toolmaking could lead to deep cuts, which easily became infected in the absence of antiseptics. Evidence from bone tool production at Olduvai Gorge shows repeated marks on long bones, reflecting not only the skill required, but also the high likelihood of failure and injury. Chronic pain was a daily companion. Skeletal evidence shows widespread arthritis, periostitis, and tooth decay, demonstrating how repetitive strain, hard diets, and untreated injuries left early humans constantly suffering. Life expectancy hovered between 25 to 40 years, but those who lived into their 30s or 40s carried the accumulated damage of decades of hardship. The inability to treat wounds, disease, or childbirth complications made survival a precarious balance. Cavemen relied on social support, crude remedies, and sheer luck. Fossil evidence, such as healed fractures and disabled individuals cared for by their groups, confirms that early humans had begun to develop forms of caregiving. Still, the margin for error was razor-thin. Even a small infection or untreated injury could become deadly, proving that being human at this time meant living in constant physical peril. For a caveman 1 million years ago, there was no recovery, no hospital, and no safety net. Only the daily, exhausting fight to keep the body alive. So being a caveman 1 million years ago was not survival. It was a daily nightmare. Every waking moment was a battle against predators, starvation, disease, injury, and the merciless elements. Fossils like OH-82's broken arm and KNM-ER 1808's diseased femur show that early humans endured pain, sickness, and injuries that would be treatable today. Yet back then, even a minor cut could kill. Predators were relentless. Lions, saber-toothed cats, crocodiles, and cave bears didn't just threaten humans, they hunted them. The Taung Child skull and OH7 illustrate just how violent and gruesome predation could be, showing that humans were prey long before they became hunters. Night offered no respite. Sleep was shallow, dangerous, and constantly interrupted by the fear of attack. Starvation was inevitable. Food was scarce, unpredictable, and exhausting to obtain. Every meal required effort, risk, and ingenuity. But even that was no guarantee. Harsh weather, freezing cold, scorching heat, and droughts turned survival into a gamble where losing often meant death. Disease, injury, and childbirth made life short and painful. Children died young, adults suffered chronic illness and broken bodies, and mothers faced nearly insurmountable risks. Tools and fire helped a little, but they could not protect humans from the constant barrage of threats. Even social cooperation, one of humanity's first advantages, was no guarantee of safety. In every possible way, life sucked for a caveman. It was dangerous, exhausting, painful, and unforgiving. Every day could be your last, every night could be your final one, and no amount of cleverness, bravery, or cooperation could ever make it truly safe. To be a human back then was to endure a world designed to kill you at every turn. That is why it truly sucked to be a caveman 1 million years ago.